start this sermon with an apology. It seems that something about what I did with the computer means that you won't be able to see the slides this morning. Actually, our hard drive is full. Our staff has been working so hard, they filled it up. And there wasn't space for my sermon to fit on the drive this morning. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not. But here we are. Now, another thing I'll tell you is that I'm using my iPad like I always do because my notes are on the iPad and I'm just comfortable doing that. But last Sunday we had problems with that in the second service. We're having all kinds of technical difficulties. I don't know if it's because I'm from Texas or what. But probably. And there we are. So,
I want you to know I'm from Texas also.
then it's your fault. All right, thank you for that. I have a guest from Texas with us this week, Kathy Harris from Midland, Texas. She was a member of my church at Greenwood. Now that's not so that you can go and ask her questions after the service. Kathy knows things that I don't want told. All right. Okay, let's get started. Anyway, I've got backup in case this fails. It failed last week. I've got backup of hard copy. Just wanted you to know. We've been talking about Bethlehem and Bedlam. And one of the aspects of Bedlam for Bethlehem was the fact that Jesus was born there. We see in this story in Luke that it must have been disruptive for the shepherds to come, for the shepherds to be told, for the shepherds to leave their flock. For shepherds to leave their flock, it's got to be a big event. That's what shepherds do. They hang out with the sheep. And so for them to abandon their flock and go to Bethlehem and see this baby was a remarkable event. It was disruptive. Listen to this story from Anita Haslin. She says, our church used a small donkey from a nearby farm for our Christmas pageant, which ran 4 evenings in a row. Elvis, the donkey, was well-mannered and a popular member of the cast. And each evening, Elvis's owner brought him to church in a pickup truck before the pageant. One evening, my visiting adult daughter, Jeanette, and I walked across the church parking lot, and I saw the donkey being unloaded from the truck. I said brightly to Jeanette, "Oh, there's Elvis." She looked at me with sorrowful surprise. "Oh, Mom, not you too." The coming of Jesus is disruptive. The birth of Jesus disrupts the world. Babies coming usually do. I'm looking forward to April when my life's going to be disrupted with my new granddaughter. I'm looking forward to that kind of disruption, but babies sometimes bring a disruption that's not really appreciated. Jesus brings a disruption that probably had its difficulties. Well, it certainly had its difficulties just a few months or years later whenever Herod orders the massacre of all of the infants, trying to snuff out this life that was unique in the universe. We have the opportunity to tell the glad tidings of Jesus' birth. Now, in order to do that, I think it's important that we pay attention to the targets. Who did Jesus' birth come to? Where was the announcement made? It's made to the shepherds. Now, while shepherds are recognized for their noble efforts in Jewish society at this time, people appreciate shepherds. King David was a shepherd. There's all kinds of shepherd imagery in the Scriptures. Still, it wasn't an occupation that people just really enjoyed. If you hung out with the sheep, you would smell of sheep. It was a hard life. It was a constant life. Anyone who's ever been involved with livestock knows that you really can't just leave them to their own devices all the time. You've got to care for them, and maybe that's particularly true of sheep. But the target for Jesus' message, the target for the good news is the shepherds. He comes to the lowest. He comes to the least. He comes in poverty. He comes in a way that is not glorious and not a spectacle that one might expect of the king. Instead, he comes like one of us. He comes so that anyone, anywhere, can receive him. In an article for Christian Standards magazine entitled Carols for Any Season of Suffering, Matt Proctor reflects on the Incarnation. He says, "My 5-year-old Carl and my 3-year-old Conrad love it when I dress like them. After they put on jeans and a blue t-shirt, they'll come ask me to wear jeans and a blue t-shirt. When I do, they have a saying. They'll survey me, survey themselves, and say, 'Look, Dad, same. For my birthday, Carl bought me a North Carolina blue mesh shirt because he has a North Carolina blue mesh shirt. We could be same. When I play living room football with my boys, Conrad will not let me play standing, so big and scary and towering above him. The theological term for this is completely other. Instead, he insists that I get on my knees. When I'm down on eye level, Conrad puts his hand on my shoulder and says, 'There, see, Dad? Same. They like it when I enter their world. This summer I scraped my leg working on my house. When Conrad fell down and scraped his leg, he pointed at the scab and then he showed me his and said, 'Hey, Dad, same. Here's the point. God himself has felt what we have felt. See, in the Incarnation, he chose not to stay completely other. He got down on eye level. And in the Incarnation, God experienced what it's like to be tired and discouraged. He knows what it's like to be hurt, to bleed. On the cross, Jesus himself prayed a psalm of lament. My God, why have you forsaken me?' In your pain, you may be tempted to say, 'God, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea how badly I'm hurting.' But God can respond, 'Yes, I do.' He can point to your wounds and then to his own and say, 'Look, same. Me too. I have entered your world, and I know how you feel. I have been there, and I am with you now. I care, and I can help.' And that is what Christmas is all about. If we're to tell the good news, the glad tidings of Jesus coming to earth, we need to consider his targets. His targets were the lowly. His targets were the meek. His targets were the dispossessed. His targets were you, me. We need to find folks just like that, folks like us, to tell them that God can identify with their hurt, with their pain, with their suffering. He knows. Same. And then we need to tell it. It's no good just to simply wish for it to be told. It's no good simply to hold on to the good news for ourselves and not share it with other people. The first thing that the shepherds did after they heard the news was to go and find Jesus. And then you know that they had to share it with other people, other shepherds, other folks in Bethlehem, down at the co-op, wherever that was in Bethlehem. They probably sat around drinking coffee or whatever they drank in those times and told the story of how the angel had come. They shared with their fellows. They shared with their brothers and sisters. They shared with all they knew, because this was remarkable news. An angel had come, but more than an angel coming, the angel pointed to the baby who had come in Bethlehem. They needed to tell it. They needed to share it. It's a compelling thing when you encounter the gospel. Father Damien was a priest who became famous for his willingness to serve lepers. He moved to Colwell, a village on the island of Molokai in Hawaii that had been quarantined to serve as a leper colony. For 16 years, he served in their midst. He learned to speak their language. He bandaged their wounds. He embraced the bodies no one else would touch. Preached to hearts that would otherwise have been left alone. He organized schools, bands, and choirs. He built homes so that lepers could have shelter. He built 2,000 coffins by hand so that when they died, they could be buried with dignity. Slowly, it was said, Colwell became a place to live rather than a place to die. For Father Damien offered hope. Father Damien was not careful about keeping his distance. He did nothing to separate himself from his people. He dipped his fingers in the poi bowl along with the patients. He shared his pipe. He did not always wash his hands after bandaging open sores. He got close. And for this, the people loved him. And then one day he stood up and began his sermon with 2 words. We lepers. Now he wasn't just helping them. He was one of them. From this day forward, he wasn't just on their island. He was in their skin. First, he had chosen to live as they lived. Now he would die as they died. Now they were in it together. One day, God came to earth and began his message. We lepers. Now he wasn't just helping us. Now he was one of us. Now he was in our skin. Now we were in it together. You and I are the targets. We're the ones that are told, but we're the ones because Jesus came and incarnated himself as a human being. We become able to become messengers of the good news. We become the ones transformed. We become the ones touched by his love and therefore able to share the love with others. Kind of like sardines. Targets, telling, and then triumph. Theodotus of Ankara, a martyred saint from the 4th century. Think about that. How long this has been going on. 400 years into the telling of this story, he shares this, but it's now close to 1,700 years past this telling. Anyway, Theodotus says this. the Lord of all, comes as a slave amidst poverty. The hunter has no wish to startle his prey, choosing for his birthplace an unknown village in a remote province. He is born of a poor maiden and accepts all that poverty implies, for he hopes by stealth to ensnare and save us. If he had been born to high rank and amidst luxury, unbelievers would have said the world had been transformed by wealth. If he had chosen his birthplace, the great city of Rome, they would have thought the transformation had been brought about by civil power. Suppose he had been the son of an emperor, they would have said how useful it is to be powerful. Imagine him as the son of a senator. It would have been said, look what can be accomplished by legislation. But in fact, what did he do? He chose surroundings that were poor and simple, so ordinary as to be almost unnoticed, so that people would know it was the Godhead alone that had changed the world. This was his reason for choosing his mother from among the poor of a very poor country and for becoming poor himself. If we want to bear the good news of Jesus to the world, it's appropriate that we consider his targets. It's essential that we tell the story. And it's glorious that we can share the triumph. For God became like you and like me, so that all of us could know he loves us. I know it's almost too good to be true. We have a hard time believing that God could do such a thing. That God could identify with my pain, with my hurt, with my woundedness. But he does. And he comes and he shares with us all that is needed to bind those wounds. He shares himself. So when you have the opportunity to visit with someone in this coming week, in this coming month, in this coming year, and you have the opportunity to hear their struggles, to hear their life being told in their story, be sure that you tell a bit of yours and include in the telling of your story the story of Jesus, the story